I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the Director of PDC Europe, Werner von Moltke. Thank you very much for the time, Werner. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And as I say, appreciate your time. And it's a busy time for you, I know, because when we're talking on this Thursday, it'll have been last week when people are listening to this. We've got the World Series finals upon us in Austria. And of course, this week, when people will be listening this weekend, it will be the European Tour coming back. But we'll come into that in a moment. But first off, wanted to get a bit more info on yourself. Where did your involvement and interest in darts begin?
Well, actually, that's a funny story. I was on winter vacation skiing with my wife and newborn son in 2005 in Switzerland. And I remember I had an apartment from a friend of mine. And as my son was 2 years old, we stayed at home every night, and wife was taking care of the boy. Husband was bored, so he watched television. He zapped through the channels, and somehow he stopped at Sport 1, which was the German darts channel where darts was aired, and the World Championships 2006 were running. So I watched it for one night, found it some interesting, and the next night I watched it again, and the other night, and I somehow got into it. And then I remember there was the semi-final, Phil Taylor against Wayne Mardle, which Phil won 6-5. And this was a match that actually changed my life because at that night I decided this sport is so great. It has everything you need for great sport, so I want to do something with it. And at that night I decided that I need to have contact to Phil Taylor, that I need to bring him to Germany, and then it all started, and I came back from the vacation beginning of January. Found his manager at that time, Steve Moderset, via internet. They said, well, we are coming to Germany in the next days anyway, because German, weekly talk show also contacted him and invited him as a guest. The show was called TV Total. So we met in January in Cologne, and I just said, when you have time, can you come to Germany? And he said, well, the only date I have is Easter this year. I remember April 15th, 2006. I can visit you at that weekend. And then I said, okay, we have to do it, because I wanted to have it done before the World Championship, the Football World Championship in summer 2006 in Germany, which I knew was going to, everybody would only be interested in football at that time. So I wanted to do it before. And we managed, and we did an exhibition. It was called Meet the Power here in Munich. From scratch, there was nothing. I had no idea how to plan such an event. I was totally surprised that I need so much boards, that all this preparation, I had no clue at all. But I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring him here. And at the end, it worked out right, and was really a life changer for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose from those early days, getting those exhibitions on, a few years later, we see PDC Europe born in 2009, coming from, I believe, the German Darts Corporation, GDC. Talk to me about how that all came about, the birth of PDC Europe.
Well, after that exhibition in 2006, I remember it was Sunday. I brought Phil to the airport to fly back to the UK. And during that drive, he said, do you know Barry Hearn? And to be honest, at that time, I didn't know who Barry Hearn was. And he said, well, you have to meet him. And I said, okay. And I met Barry April 20th, 5 days later, in Doncaster at the Premier League. And that was actually the kickoff when Barry said, okay, good, you want to do darts in Germany? Go for it. And the first 2 years, the territory was Germany, Austria, Switzerland, so German-speaking Europe. And then we founded the German Darts Corporation and started a series of tournaments in 2007, mainly for players. We didn't think about spectators at that time, and so we found the German Darts Corporation to implement a series of talented German players, which started quite well in the beginning. I remember the first tournament, I think we had over 400 participants, people who joined in, but it slowed down quite fast. After 3 or 2 tournaments, we only had 120 players. That was the average. So because most of the people, they saw it also on television, they also thought they were talented, but they recognized quite fast that the talent wasn't that big or that good, so they drove home, had 2 matches, lost twice first round, and it wasn't fun. It cost a lot of money, and you go back and you have to explain to your wife or girlfriend or whoever, well, it wasn't that good that time, next time. But if you've done that 3 or 4 times, then people started, to stay away. So at the end, it was about 120 people who regularly came and who played the German Darts Championship, which was always won either by Werner von Moltke or Michael Burton at that time.
And as the boss of PDC Europe, you've been involved in the growth of PDC Darts in Europe for well over 10 years now. You've had a lot of success. There's been some big crowds on the European Tour, the Premier League nights that we see now as well, other tournaments on the TV as well. What would you say have been the biggest challenges on the way to getting where you are now?
To be honest, I have to say something. I was always carried by the PDC. Okay, it's not a PDC Europe only success story. It's always that I was backed and supported, and to be honest, carried by the PDC. Milestones, of course, was meeting Barry Hearn, and having such a great partner who was giving face, who was giving support, who was actually subsidizing it also in the early years, and. That was the first thing. Then, of course, a milestone which implemented by the PDC was the first European Darts Championship in 2008 in Frankfurt at the Südbahnhof Frankfurt, and that was crazy times. Our first television tournament or TV tournament, as you say. And I remember the first night, Thursday night, we had about 20 people or 20 sold tickets, and. But everybody from PDC, also from ITV, was cool. We went outside, we invited some people in, gave them some free beers. And at the end, there were 50 or 60 people in the venue, spread on 4 or 5 tables. Cameras only took these 4 or 5 tables the whole evening. It was great. At home, you had the feeling it was really good. Had a really good spectator number that they were nearly sold out. It worked very well, and I learned at that tournament a lot about pragmatism of the English people and the PDC. That don't panic when something is not perfect, and they always found or are finding a practical solution because there's any challenges. But that was a great moment. Your first European Darts Championship in 2008. Then, of course, bringing the World Cup of Darts to Germany or to Europe. We played it also in other countries in 2010. Of course, Premier League 2018 was a milestone for us in a big venue, Mercedes-Benz Arena, Berlin. So these are probably the key milestones we had.
We talk about the European Tour, of course, born in 2012 with the 5 events, and it's grown into this massive tour now. Obviously not this year because of the virus. We were due to have the 13 events again this year, but just talk to me a little bit about the European Tour, how it all came about, and how pleased you've been really with its progress over the last 8 years.
Well, of course, I'm very pleased. I mean, we've been growing now year by year for the last 8 years. But also hear the backup from the PDC as we sat down and how can we make it more popular, and we actually found out that in the beginning we made tournaments for the players, but we had to make tournaments for the spectators so that they come. And in the beginning we did floor tournaments with 32 boards, and people could walk around, but it was not the feeling spectators had from what they've seen on television. On television, there's a big stage, there's a big crowd in front of it, only one stage, one board, and it's one-on-one. And then we decided to change our European Tour format, Players Champion format, into this experience for the spectators. And this was a big change. And then people started coming and said, well, you know what, in Germany, it's the same feeling as watching it on television at the Ali Pally. So that was I think a key moment in the beginning, or for the start of the European Tour in 2012. And so we called it PDC Tour. Of course, in the beginning it was focused on Germany, Austria, Netherlands. But then we always said we need to develop more international, and we looked into other countries, and I think now we are playing also in the Czech Republic, in Hungary, in Gibraltar. Other territories are to come, and so it's I'm quite pleased, and it's been a fun and successful ride in the last 8 years.
Yeah, it's been great to see and great to follow it from this end. And the last few years we've seen, as you mentioned, the European Tour venture into new countries. The Czech Republic last year, of course, this year you were due to debut in Hungary before the virus ruled that event out for this year at least. But how does the selection process work for moving into new markets, moving into new countries? I imagine there's a lot of research which goes into it.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of research, but it's not rocket science. At the beginning, of course, TV presence or TV coverage in such countries is always a key factor. This is done by the PDC, by Matchroom, by Barry Hearn. He sells the TV rights into the different territories and markets, and once a TV channel bought the rights, it's always a big help for us because it shows there is some interest, there is something moving, because they have done their own local or regional market research. And this is the key thing is always TV. On the other hand, of course, talented players. That also helps when the players develop, like here we have Karel Sedlacek from Czech Republic, or other players, Krzysztof Ratajski from Poland. Such developments, of course, help. If Krzysztof Ratajski wins the World Championship, I think it would be a massive boom, and it would certainly help staging darts tournaments also in Poland. Okay, so and of course, existing darts communities also help. But the main I would say main factors is TV. Is there a TV channel who airs darts, and secondly, afterward, is there talented players in this country?
Brings us nicely on to my next question, and it's a question that we often get asked on the show by our listeners. Where would we like to see the European Tour go next? Is there, I know it's probably difficult at the moment given things that are going on, but are there any other countries on your radar at the moment that you want to get to for future events?
Well, PDC, of course, has to answer this on a global stage, and I think they are looking into Asia and Pacific Rim probably, and other countries, North America. I'm only Central Europe. We are, to be honest, looking at Eastern Europe. There's a development there. There's a movement there, and Poland could be a potential country. We are talking to people there. Eastern Europe on the one hand, on the other hand, Southern Europe, mainly Spain and Portugal, where there is interest, where there is talent. Where we are looking at partners, where we have also some partners already. So these are probably the next candidates, let's put it that way. And finally, where there's no darts at all, it's in France, our neighbor country. I think in the last, I don't know, I'm doing darts now here for 14 years. We haven't sold one ticket yet to France. It's crazy. And there is an existing soft tip darts community in France, no joke. There are big soft tip tournaments in Arcachon and other, but somehow they ignore the PDC or professional steel darts in any way. But it worked without them also.
I'm sure you'll crack that market one day. But what's the end goal for the European Tour? We had Rod Harrington on during the summer, and he outlined his own vision for more European Tour events in more places, obviously replacing some of the Players' Championship events and getting more players out to these different countries. What do you see for the future for the European Tour?
Well, quite similar to what Rod Harrington said, and at the end of the day, it's the PDC, it's the PDC board, it's Barry Hearn who gives the strategy. I mean, we talk with them, we make proposals, we maybe somehow consult them, but at the end of the day, it all has to fit into the overall strategy of the PDC. And as I said, the countries, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe are next candidates, and replacing maybe Pro Tour events with European Tour events with spectators. Yes, I agree. This would be a logic next step.
Excellent. And as I mentioned earlier, we're talking ahead of the World Series finals in Austria, but when people will be listening to this, it will be looking ahead to the European Tour in Germany. Both, of course, they're going to be the first events back with a limited crowd, which is going to be great to see. What's the uptake been like at this moment in time when we're talking on tickets so far for these events, given that we've had such a long time without the crowds? I know there's not been any tickets sold in France, but what about the uptake elsewhere?
Well, it's... people, I mean, due to the limited numbers, I think we are doing okay. But the overall, if you ask me, like in Salzburg, the capacity of the venue before COVID, before Corona, was 3,500. Now it's limited to 1,500, which we will have on Saturday evening. But to be honest, we even if the whole capacity would have been approved or allowed again, we wouldn't have sold 3,500 tickets. People are a little, not everybody, but overall, there is of course some reservations. Some people feel a little unsure. Others say, "Well, it's great, we want to do that." But in overall, of course, people are a little more, waiting for developments and. But anyhow, but the people who will come, we get a great support also from the spectators that bought tickets and are not coming, or they said also, well, you know what, it's fine, we come next year. We want to keep our tickets, our good tickets we bought, and we know it's going to come back. And we get great support from our fan base or our customer base, which actually the best news. Even if they don't come now to the events, they say how they are, still with us, and they are supporting us, and says we come next year, and we follow it now on television or whatever, and So, but the pickup for Austria now, we are happy. We will for the 1,500 we have been allowed. We have at the end we will have 80% sellout. So this is good.
That's great to hear. And just touching on the European Tour event you've got coming up the following weekend, of course, you're limited to 500 fans for each session for that, and there's a few bits on there, of course, this table service, no costumes or singing. Yeah. How much planning has really gone into getting this event on and with the fans allowed back in?
It's been a lot of planning. It's after the shock in March and April, where somehow everybody was couldn't believe what's happening and was waiting for medicine or a wonder or whatever. Then we started in May to say, well, we have to do something on our own. Okay, we need to keep moving. Or as Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep on walking. Okay, so. That's what we tried to do. We developed our first TV event. We were the first on in German television, even before the Bundesliga again, with our Super League of Darts, which started end of May. We did outdoor drive-in dart scalas in Hanover. And then in June, I said to my team, listen, guys, we will not wait until official rulings will there be or whatever. We have to be proactive. We have to develop our own security, health systems. Go to the authorities, talk to them, show them what we've found out or what we've came up with. And especially for Austria, for Salzburg, we got in touch with the Red Cross Austria. 3 of my employees now are official COVID-19 agents trained by the Red Cross Austria, who know all the rules, all the systems, every standards, everything have to look out. And then we said we go to the Salzburg arena and said, okay, at that time people indoor were allowed for 500 people. And then we said, okay, what if we divide the venue into 4 areas of 500 people? And we took the venue, took the plans and said, okay, we can. And the result was we could. So we had 4 groups of 500 people, and they all have their own entrance, their own exit, their own smoking area, their own toilets, their own wardrobe, their own whatever. So they don't get in touch in that. And the authorities there said, well, listen, guys, this is really a smart concept. And they proved it at the end of the day for 1,700 people. Now, at the end of the week, we had the ruling from Austria. Everything's now limited to 1,500, which is fine for us because our system was developed for maximum 8 people per table, which is on one visiting group. Because we now have to work with visiting groups, because visiting groups within themselves, they don't have to have distance rules or keep distance or whatever. In the maximum, it could be 8 per people. Now, on average, we have 5 people per table. So we have no problem with the 1,700 or with the 1,500 limit. But that's what we developed. Same for Hildesheim, where we are also we'll be testing an air cleaning system for the first time. And to working with the Robert Koch Institute and others to see if this really is effective. Because this is an air cleaning system which is supposed to kill all the bacteria within the air. So this is something we will try. And at the end of the day, we're trying to be proactive. because the authorities, at the end of the day, they are all, they have so much work to do. They have to control so many. They are getting bombed by so many people, so that we also try to do the work from our side, to help from our side. Listen, guys, we thought about that, and there are some who say, well, let's see how we can make it happen. Others say no. They say no, don't even talk to me. They always have, as I say, the people who say it doesn't work because, but on the other hand, we also find people who say, okay, how can we make it happen that? And it's our job. I mean, we just have to make progress. I see we have to keep moving. Everybody has to see what he can do under these circumstances, because I think some people maybe are not aware that the money is now that it's spread, that it's not like money printed and nobody has to pay back. No, these all needs to be paid back by us, by our children, by everybody. So I see everybody has actually the obligation actually to see what he can do now, because it can't. We have to see that it doesn't get much worse, because if it gets too worse, then a lot of more damage will be done that cannot be maybe solved again.
Definitely, fingers crossed for that. And I'm going to try and squeeze in two more questions before I let you go, and really just touching on these next couple of weekends is going to be interesting to see how they play out with the fans back in the venues. Obviously, we've got our fingers crossed they're all going to go well, and if it is a success the next couple of weekends, it could be an interesting situation, because we've got the World Grand Prix coming up here in the UK. That's behind closed doors. We've had the World Match Play, the Premier League, both behind closed doors here in the UK. So if that situation stays the same in the UK, and you guys in Germany and Austria, you're able to have the fans in the venues, could you perhaps see some of the bigger events that we used to see in the UK moving over to Germany, Austria and around Europe during the rest of the year?
To be honest, at present I don't, but at the end of the day, that's a PDC decision. If PDC wants to do that, then we, of course, will be ready to execute their plans. But my personal opinion at present is no, and especially as the bigger the tournaments are, the more traditional, like the World Championship or the World Match Play, they will not move. It's like you can't play Wimbledon somewhere else. Okay, so same for these tournaments. My personal opinion, but it's at the end of the day, it's a PDC decision, and we are their partners. We are their executing partners. Whatever they want to do in Europe, we will be there and try to do it.
Fair enough. And just lastly, really, a lot of focus will be on the next couple of weekends for you guys. But looking ahead, you've got the European Championship penciled in for the end of October, start of November in Dortmund. You're hoping to put on 2 more European Tour events, I'm assuming, before that tournament takes place. Is there any news, anything you can tell us about those 3 events?
Yes. Well, our plan is to execute the European Darts Championship. At present, we have 3 alternatives where we could stage it, which we will discuss with the PDC, with Matthew Porter, this weekend in Salzburg. Probably will come out next weekend with a plan or with a venue where we want to stage it. We will put on at least two more European Tour events before that as qualification mode. We will also announce within the next 10 days. Yes, that's our plan. Of course, as you know, everything is under challenge or whatever that it can be. If anything changes or there will be a breakout somewhere near these areas that events need to be cancelled, or which we plan now as a backup scenario will be played behind closed doors.
Well, Werner, I really appreciate you taking out so much of your time to have a chat with us, and well done on a tremendous job that you've done in getting these events on over the next couple of weekends, and wish you all the best for them and all the rest of the ones that you've got coming up during the rest of the year as well.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure talking to you.